A first-class ticket. A seasoned gate agent with a hidden agenda. A black woman who refused to be erased. The 3 words that would cost an airline billions were spoken not in a boardroom, but at the chaotic boarding gate of Aura Flight 88. You've been downgraded. They thought she was just another passenger they could bully into submission. They were wrong. They had no idea that the woman they tried to humiliate was hours away from acquiring their entire company. This isn't a story about revenge, it's a story about reckoning, and how one woman's quiet dignity ignited a revolution at 30,000 feet. Dr. Alani Williams believed in precision. It was the principle that had guided her from a scholarship kid in Inglewood to a PhD in astrophysics from MIT, and finally to becoming the most feared and respected strategist at Orion Capital Partners, the private equity firm that consumed struggling corporations like a black hole devoured light. Precision was in the sharp crease of her Tom Ford trousers, the quiet, authoritative tick of her Patek Philippe Calatrava, and the meticulously organized contents of her Bottega Veneta briefcase. On this crisp Tuesday morning, September 29, 2025, her precision was focused on Aura Airlines Flight 88, a non-stop service from New York's JFK to London Heathrow. The flight was a necessary evil, a 7-hour airborne incubator for the final phase of Project Zenith, Orion's codename for the hostile takeover of Aura Holdings, a legacy airline bleeding cash and hemorrhaging goodwill. Alani was the architect of the takeover. The board meeting in London the next day was a formality. The king was already dead. They just needed to crown the new ruler. And Alani was there to hand-deliver the crown. The Aura Airlines Celestial Lounge at JFK's Terminal 4 was a study in faded glory. The leather on the armchairs was cracked. The complimentary champagne tasted vaguely of bruised apples, and the Wi-Fi was insultingly slow. It was a perfect metaphor for the company itself. A premium brand name masking systemic decay. Alani ignored the ambiance. Her focus lasered in on the final acquisition documents on her tablet. She was putting the finishing touches on the transition plan, a 200-page document detailing a top-to-bottom restructuring. The plan was ruthless, efficient, and, in Alani's expert opinion, the only thing that could save the airline from itself. Now boarding all first-class passengers for Aura Flight 88 to London Heathrow at Gate B24, a disembodied voice announced, a slight crackle of static betraying the aging PA system. Alani packed her tablet away, slid her briefcase handle over her carry-on, and made her way to the gate. She moved with an unhurried grace that commanded space around her. People unconsciously made way. She presented her boarding pass, seat 2A, first class, to the gate agent. The agent, a woman in her late 50s, with tired eyes and a name badge that read Clara, barely glanced at her. She scanned the pass. A dissonant beep echoed from the machine. Clara frowned, her lips tightening into a thin line. She scanned it again. Same beep. "There seems to be a problem with your seat," Clara said, her voice flat, devoid of any customer service warmth. She refused to make eye contact, instead tapping aggressively at her keyboard. Alani waited, a model of patience. Airport logistics were prone to hiccups. "Is it a system glitch?" she asked, her voice calm and even. "No," Clara clipped, still typing. "The flight is overbooked in first. We have an equipment change. Smaller cabin." She finally looked up, her gaze sweeping over Alani's expensive but understated attire, lingering for a fraction of a second too long. It was a look Alani knew well, a look of assessment, of questioning, a look that asked, "Do you really belong here?" "I see," Alani replied, her internal composure solidifying into a diamond-hard resolve. "I booked this ticket 3 months ago and confirmed my seat assignment this morning. An equipment change is unfortunate, but as a revenue-paying first-class passenger with top-tier status, I should be prioritized. Clara let out a short, humorless huff. Everyone is a priority, Ma'am. We have to make adjustments for weight and balance. It's a safety issue. The excuse was so flimsy, so transparently false, that it was insulting. We've had to downgrade one passenger. We can rebook you on the next flight tomorrow morning. The suggestion was ludicrous. Tomorrow is not an option. I have a critical meeting at 9 a.m. in London. I need to be on this flight, in the seat that I paid for. Clara's mask of corporate indifference began to slip, replaced by a flinty stubbornness. I can't help you. The manifest is closed. Your seat has been reallocated. Just then, a young blonde woman in a brightly coloured tracksuit and pristine white sneakers rushed to the podium, breathless. "Hi, I'm Tiffany. I was at the help desk. They said you had my new boarding pass?" Clara's entire demeanour shifted. A warm, accommodating smile bloomed on her face. "Of course, dear. Right here." She printed a new boarding pass from the machine and handed it to Tiffany with a flourish. "We were able to get you that upgrade after all. You're in 2A now. Have a wonderful flight." Tiffany squealed with delight. "Oh my God, thank you. You're a lifesaver." She grabbed the ticket and bounced towards the jet bridge without a second glance. The blood in Alani's veins turned to ice. It wasn't a random downgrade. It wasn't an overbooking. It was a replacement. Her seat, her confirmed, paid-for seat, had been given away right in front of her. She looked at Clara, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous calm. "You just gave my seat to that woman." "Ma'am, like I said, the cabin is full," Clara repeated, her eyes darting away, unable to meet Alani's intense stare. "It was a last-minute accommodation. These things happen." "These things," Alani said, the two words hanging in the air like a death sentence, "do not just happen. You made a decision. I'd like to speak with your supervisor." Clara's face hardened. "He'll tell you the same thing." She picked up her radio. "Alex, I need you at gate B24. Got a passenger dispute." She said the last two words with a weary sigh, as if Alani was a piece of lost luggage, an inconvenience to be managed. Alani stood her ground, a silent, immovable object. The line behind her was growing, the murmurs of impatient passengers starting to swell. She felt their eyes on her, their judgment. She was now the problem, the angry black woman, holding up the flight. The stereotype was a cage they were trying to lock her in. But Alani Williams had spent her entire life breaking out of cages. This one would be no different. Alex Thorne arrived with the practiced stride of a man who believed his mere presence could de-escalate any situation. He was tall, with impeccably coiffed silver hair, and a suit that was just a little too shiny, betraying its mid-range quality. He wore an air of managerial authority, like a cheap cologne, overpowering and ultimately ineffective. "Good morning," he said, addressing the space between Alani and Clara, a classic corporate tactic to avoid taking sides. "I'm Alex Thorne, the station's duty manager. What seems to be the trouble here?" Clara launched into her version of events, painting a picture of operational necessity and unfortunate circumstances. "Equipment change, weight and balance. You know the drill, Alex. I had to make a tough call. This passenger," she gestured towards Alani with a flick of her pen, "is refusing to accept the downgrade." Alex turned his full attention to Alani, his expression a carefully crafted mask of sympathy. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration. I truly do. Unfortunately, Clara is correct. These are FAA regulations we're dealing with, and my team has to make operational decisions in real time to ensure an on-time departure." Alani met his gaze without flinching. Mr. Thorne, let's dispense with the jargon. I was not downgraded due to weight and balance. I was downgraded because your agent gave my confirmed, revenue-purchased seat to another passenger, whom I just witnessed receive it as a complimentary upgrade. A flicker of annoyance crossed Alex's face before being swiftly replaced by more condescending empathy. I'm sure it looked that way, but the computer makes these decisions. It's an algorithm. My hands are tied. An algorithm? Alani's voice was sharp, cutting through his placating tone. Are you suggesting your algorithm has a name, and that name is Clara? Because I watched her make the decision with my own eyes. I watched her smile and hand over my seat. A young man in the line behind them, wearing a grey hoodie and glasses, subtly angled his phone, its camera lens catching the light. He had been listening intently, his thumb hovering over the record button. Alex's smile tightened. He was losing control. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Look, I can see you're upset. Tell you what I'll do. I'll give you a $500 travel voucher for your trouble, and we have a seat for you in Economy Plus. It's a middle seat, I'm afraid, but it's all we have left if you want to make it to London today. It was the ultimate insult. Not just the downgrade, but the offer of a pittance, a bribe to make the problem, her, go away. The offer to cram her 6-foot frame into a middle seat in economy was the final, degrading flourish. A $500 voucher does not compensate for a $12,000 ticket, Mr. Thorne. Nor does it compensate for the breach of contract. More importantly, it doesn't address the discriminatory action taken by your employee. The word hung in the air. Discriminatory. Alex recoiled as if stung. His face flushed a blotchy red. Now wait just a minute. There is no need to make baseless accusations. This has nothing to do with that. This is a simple logistics issue. He glanced around nervously, noticing the growing crowd and the single unblinking eye of the phone camera. He had to shut this down. My final offer, he said, his voice now cold and hard, all pretense of customer service gone. Take the seat in Economy Plus, or we can remove your luggage and you can wait for tomorrow's flight. The choice is yours, but this plane is leaving. He tapped his watch for emphasis. You're holding up over 300 people. The public humiliation was complete. He had framed her as the aggressor, the unreasonable customer causing a scene. The other passengers stared, a mixture of annoyance and pity in their eyes. Alani looked at Alex's smug face, at Clara's triumphant smirk. She saw the entire corporate culture of Aura Airlines reflected in their expressions. A culture of apathy, of cutting corners, of prioritizing the easy way out over the right way. A culture of decay. For a fleeting moment, she considered unleashing the storm. She could make one phone call to Sir Julian Croft, the chairman of Orion Capital, and by the time this plane landed, Alex and Clara wouldn't just be fired, the entire JFK ground operation would be gutted. The name Dr. Alani Williams would be a scorched earth crater in their resumes. But she held back. It was too soon. The deal wasn't formally announced. Revealing her hand now would be an emotional act, and Alani was not an emotional actor. She was a strategist, and a strategist knows that sometimes the most powerful move is a tactical retreat. You gather intelligence from the inside. You let your enemy believe they have won. With a profound, chilling calm, she nodded slowly. Fine, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I'll take the seat. A palpable wave of relief washed over the gate area. Alex gave a curt, victorious nod. Excellent. Clara will print your new boarding pass. Clara did so with undisguised glee, handing over the flimsy piece of paper that read, Seat 34 for E. Alani took it without looking at it. She picked up her bags and walked towards the jet bridge. As she passed Alex, she paused, her voice so low only he could hear it. "You should know, Mr. Thorne," she said, "that every decision has a consequence. Every single one." He just smirked. "Have a pleasant flight, ma'am." Alani walked down the jet bridge, her head held high. She passed the plush, spacious pods of first class, saw the blonde girl, Tiffany, already sipping pre-departure champagne in her seat, 2A. Tiffany glanced up, a flicker of recognition, but no remorse in her eyes. Alani continued her walk of shame, past business class, through the curtain, into the cramped, chaotic world of economy. She found 34E, a non-reclining middle seat by the lavatories, wedged between a snoring man whose shoulder was already encroaching on her space, and a young mother with a crying baby. As she squeezed herself and her briefcase into the tiny space, the humiliation felt like a physical weight. The cabin door closed with a final, sealing thud. But as the engines began to whine, Alani's anger began to cool, crystallizing into something far more dangerous. A plan. They thought they had put her in her place. They had no idea they had just placed her in the perfect position to witness the rot from the inside. This flight was no longer a simple trip. It was a 7-hour audit, and school was officially in session. The stale, recycled air of the economy cabin was a stark contrast to the filtered atmosphere of the celestial lounge. The scent was a mix of lukewarm coffee, jet fuel, and human anxiety. For the first hour of the flight, Alani did nothing. She sat perfectly still, a statue of composure amidst the chaos, allowing the raw anger and humiliation to flow through her and ebb away. Emotion was a cloud. Strategy was the mountain. The cloud would pass. Once her pulse returned to its resting rate, she went to work. She discreetly pulled a small, leather-bound notebook and a Mont Blanc pen from her briefcase. This was no longer a personal affront. It was a case study. Project Zenith's operational overhaul document, all 200 pages of it, was theoretical. This was the practical application. She was an undercover CEO on the eve of her reign. Her first observation, the crew. They were stretched to their breaking point. She watched one flight attendant, a kind-faced woman named Sarah, handle a demanding passenger in row 32, a complaint about a broken entertainment screen in row 35, and a request for a pillow for the crying baby next to Alani, all within 5 minutes. Sarah moved with a harried efficiency, but the stress was etched onto her face. Her uniform was clean, but worn at the cuffs. She was a dedicated employee being failed by her company. Alani made a note. Staffing levels inadequate. Uniforms need refresh. Investigate crew morale and burnout rates. Then came the service. The dinner cart rattled down the aisle, offering a binary choice. Chicken or pasta? The chicken was a rubbery, pale slab swimming in a gelatinous sauce. The pasta was a congealed lump of starch. The meal was served in a flimsy plastic container with plastic cutlery that felt like it would snap. It was an insult to the concept of food. In first class, they were likely enjoying seared scallops and vintage Bordeaux. Here, it was sustenance as an afterthought. Alani noted, catering contract review. Urgent. Disparity in service quality between cabins is a brand liability, not a feature. She tried to use the in-flight Wi-Fi, for which they charged a ludicrous $25. The connection was so slow and unstable that it was unusable. The entertainment system at her seat was indeed broken, stuck on the flight map. She looked around. At least a third of the screens on the seatbacks near her were dark or frozen. Another note, onboard tech is archaic, source new provider. Wi-Fi should be complementary and functional. It's 2025. Failure to provide basic amenities while charging premium prices is fraudulent. Every detail was an indictment. The threadbare carpets, the rattling overhead bins, the single, perpetually occupied lavatory for her entire section, its door lock finicky. This wasn't just an airline in financial decline. It was an airline that had lost its pride. It had contempt for its own customers, at least for the 90% of them who sat behind the curtain. About 4 hours into the flight, during a period of relative quiet, the flight attendant, Sarah, passed by on a water run. She paused by Alani's row. "Can I get you some water, ma'am?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yes, thank you," Alani replied. As Sarah handed her the cup, she leaned in slightly. "I saw what happened back at the gate," she whispered, her eyes full of genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry. That was completely out of line. Alex and Clara, they're notorious for that." Alani looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time, not as a data point, but as a person. "Thank you for saying that, Sarah. It means a lot." "It's not right," Sarah continued, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "We have good people working here, but management, they just don't care. They cut costs, they cut staff, and they treat people like numbers, both the passengers and us. I just wanted you to know that not all of us at Aura are like them." It was a crack in the facade, a glimpse of the airline's soul that was still worth saving. "What would you change if you could?" Alani asked, her tone shifting from passenger to confidant. Sarah looked surprised by the question, but answered immediately, a torrent of pent-up ideas pouring out. "Better staffing, so we can actually take care of people. Equipment that works. A management team that actually listens to the frontline crew instead of just sending down memos from an office tower. A little respect would be nice." Alani jotted it down in her notebook, disguised as a casual doodle. "Respect." She underlined the word twice. "Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate your candor." "Just be sure to file a formal complaint," Sarah advised before moving on. "It probably won't do any good, but you should." "Oh, I'll be filing a report," Alani said to herself. "But it won't be a complaint. It'll be a new corporate charter." The rest of the flight was a blur of note-taking and observation. Alani dissected the airline's operational failures with the same precision she'd once used to map the gravitational fields of distant galaxies. By the time the first rays of dawn streaked across the sky, and the plane began its descent into a dreary, rain-slicked London, her personal humiliation had been entirely transmuted into corporate strategy. Her notebook was filled with the framework for a revolution. The incident at the gate was no longer just the inciting incident. It was the foundational myth for the new Aura Airlines. It was the story she would tell, the why behind the what. As the plane taxied to the gate at Heathrow, the captain's voice came over the intercom, thanking them for flying Aura Airlines. Alani allowed herself a small, grim smile. They had no idea who they had just flown across the Atlantic. They thought they had transported a downgraded passenger. In reality, they had delivered a Trojan horse. Disembarking was a slow, shuffling ordeal. Alani, trapped in the middle of the herd, was one of the last to get off. As she finally stepped into the jet bridge, she saw Alex Thorne's counterpart, the London station manager, greeting the deplaning first and business class passengers at the aircraft door. He offered a perfunctory smile to Tiffany as she breezed past, chattering on her phone about her insane free upgrade. He completely ignored Alani as she emerged from the economy section, his eyes already searching for the next high-value passenger. The invisibility was, in its own way, as insulting as the confrontation had been. She walked through the terminal, her body stiff from the cramped seat, and navigated her way through immigration. Her phone, which had been in airplane mode, buzzed to life as she connected to the airport's Wi-Fi. A cascade of notifications flooded her screen: texts, emails, and 3 missed calls from a number with a +44 prefix that she knew belonged to Sir Julian Croft. She found a quiet corner away from the river of travellers and dialed him back. He answered on the first ring. "Alani." His voice was a crisp, baritone boom, the product of Eton and Cambridge. "There you are. I was beginning to worry. How was the flight?" Alani paused, the irony hanging thick in the air. "Illuminating, Julian. Deeply illuminating." "Good, good," he said, oblivious to the double meaning. "Well, get ready to put that illumination to use. The final wire transfers went through an hour ago. The board covenants have been enacted. As of 6:05 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Orion Capital Partners is the majority shareholder of Aura Holdings. The old board has been dissolved. It's done." A quiet thrill, cold and powerful, coursed through Alani. "Congratulations, Sir Julian. Congratulations to us, my dear girl. And congratulations to you specifically. I just concluded a conference call with the transition team. We are in unanimous agreement. There is only one person with the strategic vision, the operational grit, and the sheer intellectual horsepower to pull this airline out of its nosedive. The press release is drafted. The announcement will be made at the top of the hour." Alani held her breath, even though she knew what was coming. It was one thing to architect the plan. It was another to be at its center. "Effective immediately," Sir Julian declared. "The interim board has appointed you President and Chief Executive Officer of Aura Holdings." CEO. The letters seemed to vibrate in the air around her. Yesterday, she was a passenger they deemed unworthy of her seat. Today, she owned the airline. "I accept the position, Julian," she said, her voice unwavering. "Thank you for your confidence." "Excellent. We'll need you at the Shard for the press conference at 11 a.m. sharp. A car is waiting for you outside Customs, Terminal 5 arrivals. Driver's name is Arthur. He'll have a sign with the name Zenith." We needed to maintain discretion until the last moment. "I'm on my way," Alani said. "One more thing, Alani," Julian added, a new, more serious tone in his voice. "We have a bit of a situation. A PR firestorm is brewing. A video was posted on social media about an hour ago. It seems a passenger on a JFK LHR flight filmed a rather ugly incident at the gate involving one of our gate agents and a station manager." Alani froze. The boy in the grey hoodie. "The video is going viral," Julian continued. #SocialAuraShame is trending. It shows a black woman being, well, railroaded by our staff and downgraded from first class. It looks absolutely awful. The stock is already taking a pre-market beating. It's the first crisis of your tenure, I'm afraid. You'll need to address it head-on at the press conference. We need a strong statement condemning this and promising a full investigation." Alani slowly started walking again, a predatory calm settling over her. This was not a crisis. This was an opportunity. This was the universe handing her a sword. "Don't worry, Julian," she said, a hint of steel in her voice. "I am intimately familiar with the incident. I'll handle it. In fact, you couldn't have planned a better opening move." Julian was silent for a moment, confused. "What do you mean?" "You'll see," Alani said, a rare, cold smile touching her lips. "I'll see you at the Shard." She hung up and navigated the final stretch of the airport. As she emerged from the customs hall, a sea of tired travellers and waiting families, she saw him. A distinguished man in a dark suit, holding a simple black sign with one word on it in clean white letters: Zenith. Arthur, the driver, took her bags without a word and led her to a gleaming black Rolls-Royce Phantom, parked at the curb. He opened the door for her, and she slid into the impossibly soft leather interior. The world outside, with its noise and its chaos, was silenced by the thick, insulated glass. As the car pulled away from the curb, gliding silently into the London morning traffic, Alani finally took a deep, centering breath. The humiliation of gate B24, the discomfort of set 34E, the condescension of Alex Thorne, it all felt like a lifetime ago. They were memories from a different person, a passenger. She was no longer a passenger. She was the pilot now, and she was about to change the flight plan for everyone. The view from the 60th floor conference room in the Shard was breathtaking. The whole of London sprawled beneath them, a grey and ancient tapestry under a clearing sky. But Alani Williams wasn't looking at the view. She was looking at the faces of the skeletal transition team Orion had assembled, a handful of grim-faced bankers, lawyers, and a shell-shocked head of PR inherited from the previous regime named David Chen. David was sweating, despite the room's chilly temperature. His tablet was propped up, showing the live feed of Aura's stock price. It was a waterfall of red. "The video has over 5 million views," David said, his voice trembling slightly. "It's been picked up by the BBC, CNN, Reuters. The New York Times just ran a front-page story on their website titled, 'Aura of Discrimination?' We are in free fall. The consensus is that this is a brand-destroying event." Sir Julian Croft, standing by the window, turned to Alani. "Well, CEO Williams, your first trial by fire. The world is watching. What is our response?" Alani stood up and walked to the head of the table. She radiated a calm that was both unsettling and magnetic. "Our response will be swift, decisive, and total." She looked at David. "Cancel the prepared statement, the one full of corporate platitudes about investigating the incident and valuing all our customers. It's weak and transparent. Rip it up." David blinked. "But what do I tell the press? They're assembled downstairs. They're expecting a statement." "They'll get one," Alani said. "From me. Liv. No teleprompter." She then turned to a young tech analyst in the corner. "Get me a live feed to every single Aura Airlines employee terminal worldwide. Pilots' tablets, gate agent computers, crew lounge monitors, corporate headquarters. I want everyone in the company to see this press conference. Make it mandatory viewing." The analyst scrambled to comply. Sir Julian watched Alani, a slow, approving smile spreading across his face. He had chosen well. An hour later, Alani stood at a podium, a simple, dark blue Aura Airlines logo behind her. The room was a blinding galaxy of camera flashes. The frantic energy of the world's media was a palpable force. She tapped the microphone, and the room fell silent. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and steady, carrying to every corner of the room and to thousands of employees watching on screens across the globe. "My name is Dr. Alani Williams. Moments ago, I was appointed the new CEO of Aura Holdings." A ripple of shock went through the press corps. They had expected an old, white-haired industry veteran, not this young, poised black woman. "My first duty as CIO is to address a crisis that has, justifiably, shaken public faith in this airline. The crisis is a video, which I'm sure most of you have seen, of a passenger being unjustly treated by our staff at JFK Airport yesterday." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Most companies in this situation would launch a lengthy internal investigation. They would release a statement pledging to do better. They would offer thoughts and prayers for their stock price. I am not going to do any of those things because an investigation is not required. Another wave of murmurs. "I don't need to investigate," she said, her voice dropping slightly, drawing everyone in. Because I was that passenger. Total, stunned silence. You could hear a pin drop. The cameras flashed with renewed ferocity. David Chen looked like he was about to faint. "I am the woman in that video," Alani stated, her gaze sweeping across the room, unflinching. "Yesterday, I was a customer who was told my presence in first class was a problem to be solved. I was publicly humiliated, dismissed, and relegated to a middle seat in the back of the plane. Today, I am the CEO. And I am here to tell you that what happened to me was not an anomaly. It was a symptom of a deep cultural sickness that has been allowed to fester at this airline for years. A sickness of apathy, of arrogance, and of a systemic failure to see the humanity in every person who trusts us with their journey." She stood there, the embodiment of the problem and the solution all at once. It was a move of such breathtaking audacity that it completely rewrote the narrative. She wasn't a corporate suit apologizing for a nameless victim. She was the victim, and she was now in charge. So let me be unequivocally clear. To the 2 employees at JFK's Gate B24, you are the face of the old Aura Airlines, an airline that is, as of this moment, obsolete. To the passenger who filmed the incident, thank you. You did this company a greater service than you can imagine. And to every single employee of Aura Airlines watching right now, hear this. The era of mediocrity is over. The era of indifference is over. We will not just be an airline that gets you from point A to point B. We will be an airline that operates with integrity, with respect, and with a relentless pursuit of excellence. We will retrain every employee. We will overhaul every broken system. We will invest in our people and our technology. We will earn back your trust, one flight at a time. She leaned forward, her eyes finding the main broadcast camera. My tenure as CEO begins now, with a promise. This will never happen again. Not on my airline. She finished, holding the silence for a beat before turning and walking off the stage, leaving a room of thunderstruck journalists and a global audience in her wake. In the control room, the tech analyst looked up from his screen, his eyes wide. "Mum," he said to the PR head, "the company's internal servers have crashed. Too many employees trying to message at once." On the trading floor, something incredible was happening. After her speech, the precipitous fall of Aura's stock halted. Then, it began to tick up. Investors, it turned out, don't just bet on balance sheets. They bet on leadership. And they had just witnessed one of the most astonishing displays of leadership in modern corporate history. The flight back to New York was on an Aura Airlines corporate jet, a Gulfstream G650. The contrast was not lost on Alani. She spent the entire flight not reveling in the luxury, but finalizing her plan. She wasn't just going to cut out the cancer. She was going to perform the surgery in the open, as a lesson to the entire organization. Upon landing at a private hangar at JFK, she didn't go to Aura's corporate offices in the city. She went straight to Terminal 4. She had her new executive assistant, a ruthlessly efficient man poached from Goldman Sachs, call an emergency, mandatory meeting for all JFK ground operations and station management. The location? The break room behind Gate B24. Alex Thorne received the summons and grumbled about the inconvenience. The new CEO was some corporate raider from London, probably on a power trip. He straightened his tie, smoothed his hair, and prepared to put on his best managerial face. He walked into the break room, which was packed with supervisors, union reps, and other managers. They were all murmuring nervously about the viral video and the new CEO's bombshell press conference. Clara was there too, sitting in a corner, looking pale and frightened. She had been fielding calls from her family all day. Her face was all over the news. The door opened, and Dr. Alani Williams walked in, flanked by her assistant and the head of corporate security. A wave of confusion rippled through the room, which quickly morphed into dawning, sickening horror on Alex Thorne's face. He looked at Alani, at her sharp, commanding presence, her expensive, impeccable suit, and then his memory flashed back to the woman at the gate just 2 days prior. The woman he had dismissed, the woman he had threatened, the woman he had humiliated. It was the same person. His blood ran cold. Clara simply stared, her mouth agape, looking as if she had seen a ghost. Alani walked to the front of the small, crowded room. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her very presence sucked all the air out of the space. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice a blade of polished steel. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Dr. Alani Williams, your new CEO. And for some of you," her eyes locked onto Alex, "we've already met." Alex felt a tremor start in his hands. He tried to speak, but only a dry croak came out. Alani's assistant placed a large monitor on the table and pressed a button. The viral video began to play. The entire room watched in mortified silence. They saw Clara's dismissiveness. They saw Alex's condescending smile. They heard him say, "It's an algorithm. My hands are tied." They heard his final, smug offer of a middle seat in economy. When the video finished, Alani let the silence hang for a long, uncomfortable moment. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, "in this video you cited FAA regulations and weight and balance as the reason for my downgrade. As we both know, that was a lie. You then cited an algorithm, another lie. You did not act to solve a problem. You acted to silence a complaint. In doing so, you breached company policy. You violated the contract of carriage, and you exposed this company to billions of dollars in brand damage and market cap loss." She took a step closer. "This isn't about discrimination, Mr. Thorne, though it is that. This is about something you understand even better. Incompetence. You failed at your one and only job, to manage the assets of this airline. Our reputation is our single greatest asset. You lit it on fire to win a petty argument at a boarding gate. Your final offer has cost this company more than your salary for the next 1,000 years." Alex was ashen-faced, trembling. "Dr. Williams, I had no idea. If I had known who you were—" "That is the entire point," Alani cut him off, her voice sharp as a razor. "It should not matter who I was. I could have been a school teacher, a nurse, a student. The service and respect should be the same. The fact that you would treat me differently, now that you know I am your boss, proves that you are fundamentally unfit to hold a position of authority in the new Aura Airlines." She turned to her head of security. "Mr. Thorne's employment with Aura Airlines is terminated, effective immediately. Please escort him off the premises. His credentials have been revoked." 2 security officers stepped forward. Alex Thorne, a man who had wielded his little sliver of power like a king for 20 years, was wordlessly and unceremoniously marched out of the room, his career in ruins. The room was deathly quiet. Every eye was now on Clara. Alani walked over to where the gate agent sat, frozen in her chair. Alani's demeanor softened, but only slightly. The anger was replaced by a profound, dissecting disappointment. "Clara," she said, her voice now softer, more personal, which was somehow more terrifying. "I want you to look at me. I'm not your CEO right now. I'm the woman whose day you decided to ruin. The woman you looked at and deemed unworthy of the ticket she purchased. Why?" Clara finally broke, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know," she whispered, her voice choked with sobs. I was stressed. We were short-staffed. The flight was overbooked. I made a judgment call." "You did," Alani agreed. "You made a judgment that my dignity was less valuable than the convenience of avoiding a difficult conversation. You judged that I was less likely to have powerful friends than the other passenger. You were wrong. But the why doesn't matter anymore. Your actions have consequences, not just for you, but for the 60,000 other employees of this airline whose jobs are now less secure because of the damage you caused." "Please," Clara begged. "I have a family. I've been here for 30 years. "For 30 years, you have been a face of this company," Alani replied, her voice filled with a final, sad certainty. "And this is the face you chose to show the world. We cannot build a new future on a rotten foundation. Your employment is also terminated." Clara let out a quiet sob and buried her face in her hands. She, too, was escorted out. Alani turned back to the stunned and terrified employees remaining in the room. "Let this be a message to every single person in this company," she announced, her voice ringing with absolute authority. "The culture that allowed this to happen ends today. We will be a company built on one principle: respect. Respect for our customers, respect for our equipment, respect for our brand, and respect for each other. If you are on board with that mission, you will have a bright future here. If you are not, there is the door. The choice is yours. Now, get back to work." The firings of Alex Thorne and Clara were not a conclusion. They were a declaration of intent. In the stunned, cavernous silence that followed their removal from the break room at gate B24, Alani Williams saw the faces of the remaining managers and supervisors. They were a mixture of fear, shock, and, in a few telling cases, a glimmer of profound relief. The twin pillars of the old toxic culture had been publicly toppled, and now everyone was waiting to see what would be built in their place. Alani let the silence stretch, forcing them to confront the moment. She was not there to burn the entire airline to the ground. She was there to perform a controlled demolition of its rotten foundation. "What you have just witnessed was not about punishment," she finally said, her voice resonating with a calm, absolute authority that was more intimidating than any shout. It was about accountability. For too long, the culture of this airline has shielded incompetence and rewarded apathy. It has confused seniority with wisdom and procedure with justice. That ends now. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. Some of you may be wondering if your job is next. The answer is simple. It's up to you. I am not here to clean house. I am here to build a new one. I need architects, engineers, and builders who are committed to the new blueprint. We will be a company built on a single, non-negotiable principle: respect. Respect for our customers in every seat. Respect for our equipment and our brand. And most importantly, respect for each other. If you are on board with that mission, you will have a future here more promising than you can imagine. If you are not, I will personally hold the door for you on your way out. The choice is yours." She turned and left without another word, the message hanging in the air, as clear and sharp as a shard of glass. The reckoning was over. The Renaissance was about to begin. In the first 90 days of her tenure, Alani unleashed what the financial press would later call a corporate blitzkrieg of breathtaking speed and precision. Internally, it was known as the Williams Doctrine. It was a complete operational and cultural overhaul built entirely on the furious, meticulous notes she had scribbled in her notebook while wedged into the purgatory of SIAT 34E. The doctrine's first pillar was radical: employee empowerment. Alani knew that the rot started from the inside, with a workforce that felt disenfranchised and unheard. She commissioned a top-to-bottom, fully anonymous survey of all 60,000 employees, asking pointed questions about their daily frustrations, their interactions with management, and their ideas for improvement. The results were a corporate horror story. Over 70% of frontline staff felt their direct supervisors were a barrier to, not a facilitator of, good customer service. A staggering 85% of flight attendants reported feeling that their concerns about everything from passenger safety to broken galley equipment were routinely ignored. Morale wasn't just low, it was subterranean. Armed with this data, Alani didn't just present the findings to the board, she made them public within the company. For the first time, the entire workforce saw that their individual frustrations were a collective experience. Then, she acted. At a company-wide virtual town hall, she announced an immediate, across-the-board, 15% pay raise for all non-executive, frontline staff, gate agents, flight attendants, baggage handlers, and mechanics. It was a move that would cost the company nearly $500 million annually, a figure that made the Orion Capital accountants blanch. But Alani framed it not as an expense, but as an investment. We cannot ask our team to deliver a first-class experience if we treat them like coach, she stated flatly. The move stunned the airline industry and instantly transformed years of bitter employee management relations into a tentative, hopeful partnership. Her next move was to create the Frontline First Council. The council was a direct advisory board to the CEO, comprised of a dozen rotating members, all active duty, non-managerial employees. Its mandate was to bypass the layers of bureaucratic sludge and bring the operational realities of the airline directly to the executive suite. The very first person she appointed to the council was Sarah, the compassionate flight attendant from Flight 88. At their first meeting in the main corporate boardroom, Sarah, visibly nervous, spoke hesitantly about the inefficiency of the boarding process and how it consistently created stress for both crew and passengers. Alani didn't delegate. She pulled up a schematic of a plane on the main screen, and, for the next 2 hours, she and the council workshopped a new, zone-based boarding system. It was tested on a dozen routes the following week and implemented company-wide within a month, cutting average boarding times by 7 minutes. The message was electric. Your voice now matters. The second and third pillars of the doctrine, passenger experience and operational integrity, were a direct assault on the physical decay she had witnessed. She personally presided over the cancellation of the existing catering and technology contracts. The food we serve is an insult, and the Wi-Fi is a lie, she declared in an executive meeting. She leveraged Orion Capital's immense financial power to forge new partnerships. A celebrity chef was brought in to redesign every meal, from the seared tuna in first class to the premium sandwiches in economy. A landmark deal was signed with a cutting-edge satellite internet provider. 6 months later, Aura's Wi-Fi was the fastest and most reliable in the sky, and it was made free for every single passenger. Connectivity is a utility, not a luxury, Alani had argued, and she was proven right. The airline's Net Promoter Score skyrocketed. Of course, not everyone embraced the new world. A contingent of mid-level managers, lifers from the old regime like Alex Thorne, resisted. They grumbled about the cost of the changes, calling the new training initiatives woke nonsense, and complaining that empowering frontline staff undermined their authority. Alani's response was swift and surgical. Those who could not adapt were offered generous early retirement packages. Those who actively obstructed progress were simply removed. But the true centerpiece of her revolution, the cultural heart of the new Aura, was a mandatory training program called the 2A Principle. every single employee, from the newest baggage handler to the chief financial officer, had to attend the immersive, day-long course. The training began in a dark room. The video of Alani's confrontation with Clara and Alex at Gate B24 played on a large screen, just as it had in that fateful break room. But then, it transitioned into a new video, professionally produced. It was Alani, dressed in the exact same outfit she wore that day, sitting in a recreation of Seat 34E. She didn't speak as a CEO. She spoke as a passenger, her voice quiet and raw as she described the crushing weight of the humiliation, the feeling of being publicly judged and dismissed, the anger that gave way to a cold resolve. The employees then engaged in intense role-playing scenarios, forcing them to navigate complex customer issues from both sides of the counter. The training culminated with Alani's core lesson. Treat every single passenger, her voice echoed in the training room, whether they are in seat 34E or 2A, with the same level of engagement, dignity, and respect. Assume that they have the power to change your life, because you never, ever know when they will. The effect was transformative. The program didn't just teach rules, it taught empathy. It gave the employees a foundational myth, a why behind their work. The 2A principle became a company-wide shorthand for exceptional service. 1 year to the day after Alani took the helm, she stood on a brightly lit stage in a grand ballroom in Dubai, accepting the award for World's Most Improved Airline at the World Aviation Awards. The presenter had called Aura's turnaround the most dramatic and inspiring corporate transformation in a decade. The stock price had not just recovered, it had tripled. Customer satisfaction scores were leading the industry. Aura Airlines was not just saved, it was reborn. Holding the heavy glass trophy, Alani looked out at the sea of industry titans. She didn't talk about profit margins, stock buybacks, or fleet modernization. She talked about dignity. She told them the story of Flight 88 one last time, not as a complaint, but as a crucible. Greatness isn't about the thread count of your linens, or the vintage of the champagne you serve in first class, she concluded, her voice ringing with the clarity of hard-won truth. Those are merely embellishments. True greatness is a measure of the fundamental respect you show to every single person in every single seat. It is found in the quiet, consistent application of human dignity. We learned that lesson the hard way, but we learned it well, and I promise you, we are just getting started. Later that night, standing on the balcony of her hotel suite overlooking the glittering city, Alani felt a profound sense of peace. The fire of her humiliation had been forged into the engine of a new enterprise. She thought of Alex and Clara, not with anger anymore, but with a distant pity for the smallness of their world. She thought of Sarah, now a rising star in her training department. And she thought of Tiffany, the girl in seat 2A, a blissfully unaware catalyst for a revolution. Alani raised her glass of water to the desert sky. Her fight was no longer just her own. It was for every person who had ever been made to feel small, for everyone who had been dismissed, discounted, or downgraded. On her airline, on her watch, the journey itself was now the destination, and everyone had a first-class ticket to respect. Dr. Alani Williams' story serves as a powerful, resounding reminder that our actions, especially those taken when we believe we have power over someone else, have consequences that can ripple through the world in unpredictable ways. The encounter at Gate B24 was more than just poor customer service. It was a clash of values that set in motion a corporate revolution. It proves that true power isn't about the authority you're given, but about the dignity you afford to others. It's a lesson in karma, showing that the world has a funny and sometimes brutal way of balancing the books. The story of Aura Airlines isn't just about the downfall of a few. It's about the rise of a new standard where respect is the ultimate currency. If this story inspired you or made you think, please give this video a thumbs up to help us share it with more people. What part of Alani's journey resonated with you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And for more incredible stories of justice, karma, and transformation, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you for watching.